Give us my chol, give us my chol, give us my chol, give a smile. Give us my chol, give us my chol, be the reason someone smiles. Give us my chol, give us my chol, give us my chol, give a smile. Give us my chol, give us my chol, be the reason someone smiles. Give us my chol, give us my chol, give a smile. Give us my chol, give us my chol, be the reason someone smile. Give us my chol, give us my chol, give us my chol, give a smile. Give us my chol, give us my chol, be the reason someone smiles. Siva gedola, liyo liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo 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 besimcha. Be the reason someone smiles. 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 Siva gedola, liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo liyo besimcha. Siva gedola, liyo besimcha. Someone smile. Be the reason someone smile. Be the reason someone smiles. Be the reason someone smiles. Be the reason someone smiles.
Aber Talmud, und ich hatte gepanus das, kann ich hatte gepanus. In darfst du noch rein, ich hatte kein Geld. In der Balbustung Ultrabit, so sich kein Geld, dann müssen wir war von der Haus nicht lieb. Geht wir stark zerbrochen. Was ist es denn? Es hat ihm gefehlt, Drache durch ihm, es gefehlt $6,000. Monatlich habe es, gefunden zum Wabschöbens ziehen. Ich dort steht mit Paulus an, sagt mir, ich habe Mama geweint, du weißt, was sie sind, wo ich mir waff mich raus mit Stiebel. Schau, weil, kommt er uns zurück, der will groß mit ziehen, im Welser Stiebel, Lama Malke. Ich denke, man, geht ihm was ein Envelope, er hat uns gegeben, ich will sie gehen von dir. Macht er auf dem Envelope, $6,000 liegt dort. Wer hat es gegeben, so weiß ich, wer du siehst, Maße neu. Mama schon Maße neu.
Noya mavdil ben kodesh
with Elli.
Mode ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha.
Good morning, good Tvach Shavua Tova, good week, and welcome to Breakfast with Elli. It is Sunday, the 14th day of May, 2023, the 23rd day of Iyar, 5783, the year of Hakhel. The Torah portion is brand new, the book of Bamidbar, the fourth book of the Torah. HaYom, Yom Rishon l'Shabbos. First day, counting up towards Shabbos, learning the first Aliyah. And last night we counted 38 days of the Omer. We will get into that in just a couple of minutes. All right? Let's do first thing. How was your Shabbos? Did you have a good Shabbos? I certainly hope so. Yes, today is a yahrzeit, a very special yahrzeit of Mo Howard. We'll talk about Mo in a few minutes. So take your two front tzitzis and let's make a bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat tzitzit.
All right, Al Divrei Torah, everyone together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah.
Hareini mekabel.
Hareini mekabel alay mitzvat aseh shel ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. I take upon myself every single day to love my fellow friend in a very special way.
Barat Siva.
Ay Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov.
All right, time to give tzedakah. Are you ready?
I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else to keep. Yeah, I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else in need.
All right, giving a little extra for the yahrzeit of Moshe. Harley. Okay. Here we go with the Shema. Take your right hand, place it over your eyes.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
All right, and now we are ready for...
Hakhel bidvoroi.
All right, yogurt and coffee. What are you having? I'm having, what is it? Oh, peach yogurt today. Are you ready? With chocolate hazelnut coffee. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakhel niyah bidvoroi.
Coffee, blessed coffee. God bless you for being a friend. When the whole world turns on which I can depend. I want to taste you in the morning and a few times throughout the day. Yes, a cup or two in the evening too. For me, it's the only way.
All right. Today, let me get this going over here. Really slow today, this computer. I don't know why. All right, let's see what I can get for you here. Yeah, so let's do this first. All right, today in Jewish history, water from a rock. The children of Israel arrived at Rephidim on the 23rd of Iyar in 1313, 38 days after their exodus from Egypt. Rephidim was desert and, of course, waterless. The people grumbled that they and their flocks were in danger of dying of thirst. So that's when Hashem commanded Moshe to take the elders of the people to a rock, which he was to hit with his staff. He hit the rock, and from the dry stone, water sprang forth. A miracle that happened in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu struck the rock, and this water became the well of Miriam that miraculously accompanied the Jews for the next 40 years in the desert. Shimon HaChashmonai expelled the Bnei Chakra, the Syrians and their allies, to the Hellenized Jews from Jerusalem. The Chakra, Greek, which means fortress, Akra, was the fortress of Jerusalem, known as the Citadel, when it was occupied by the Greek garrison. Even when Yehuda HaMaccabee captured Jerusalem, he was unable to capture the Akra, and its occupiers exerted a certain threat, a constant threat, against the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Only in the days of Shimon HaChashmonai was the Akra captured. The date was observed as a Yom Tov, which is mentioned in Megillah Tainus. That's fantastic. All right. And in the year 1096, Crusaders attacked the Jewish community of Worms. Almost the entire community hid in the home of a nobleman, since they perished on the Al-Kedushas Hashem, by sanctifying Hashem's name. Even though the actual demise took place on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, this day is considered the beginning of their slaughter. And nearly 1,200 people died when a German torpedo sank the British ocean liner, the RMS Lusitania, off the Irish coast. That happened today in history. Born on June 19th, 1897, Moshe Harry Horowitz, better known by his stage name Mo Howard, was an American comedian and actor, best known as the leader of the Three Stooges. The group initially started out as Ted Healy and his Stooges, an act that toured the vaudeville circuit. Mo's distinctive hairstyle came about, well, I've got a video about that.
Did we tell how that whole thing happened? How you became? How did you?
I don't recall, but if so, I can review it again because it's quite interesting.
I don't think we talked about that.
When I was a small lad, up to the age 11, my mother used to wake me a half hour before the other four boys and make these cigar curls over her fingers like that and bring them down to my shoulders here. 11 years old with curls down to the shoulders. Long curls. I used to fight my way to school, in school, and back home from school. Principal wanted to know who was knocking out all the boys, you see. And when I came across a fellow who was a little too tall, I had my buddy, Rusty Johnson, stand back to back, and we'd clip him from every angle. And finally, Rusty's mother said, James, you can't go with that Howard boy anymore. You're coming home here 3 times a week with bloody nose, black eyes. I don't understand that. You have to stop. So the boy and I talked it over, and finally he said, Mo, I got an idea. I'm going to get my mother's scissors, and I want you to do a nice job on yourself.
And this is the result.
I said, okay, and I, without looking, I went around with that scissors all the way around the head, and when I got to look at myself in the mirror, it was awful. When I went home, my mother passed away right there.
Oh.
And I remembered in later years, I remembered what I looked like, and that's how, and this must have been 20 years before the Beatles were born. So this is it.
You're the originator, huh?
I would say it was an accident.
I said
They also wore them in the 12th century.
That's right.
Oh, yes, yes.
They used to have a name for these when we were kids during the Depression.
Skunk heads.
Well, no.
No, it was
No, I wish I had thought of that
Bowl and
apologize.
you used to put under your bed. What do
Yes,
you call those
yes.
bowls?
Potties.
Potties, yes. You put a potty on the head and just cover them.
Yeah, chocolate potties. I remember
Chocolate
them,
potty,
sure.
that's right.
Howard developed an interest in acting that caused his grades to worsen in school and spurred him to play hooky. I used to stand outside the theater taunting, knowing the truant officer was looking for me. I would stand there until someone came along and asked them to buy me a ticket. An adult needed to accompany a juvenile into the theater in those days. When I succeeded, I would give him my 10 cents. That's what it cost. And I'd go to the top of the balcony where I put my chin on the rail and watch spellbound from the first act to the last. I would usually select the actor I liked the most and follow their performance throughout the play. Despite his waning attendance, Howard graduated from PS 163 in Brooklyn, but dropped out of Erasmus High after only 2 months, ending his formal education. He took an electric shop course to please his parents, but quit after a few months to pursue a career in show business. Well, we all know what happened. He became the leader of his troupe of the Three Stooges, where he eventually went on television, from the movies to television, the 6 feature-length movies that he starred in, numerous television shows, The Steve Allen Show, Here's Hollywood, Masquerade Party, Ed Sullivan, Danny Thomas, Joey Bishop, Truth or Consequences. But by the 60s, the Stooges were no longer at the age where they could risk serious injury while performing their slapstick comedy. They were paid residuals for their later efforts and continued to receive the bulk of the profits from sales of Stooge merchandise. Moe sold real estate when his show business life slowed down. However, he did minor solo roles and walk-in bits in movies, and several appearances on the Mike Douglas Show in the 70s, as you just saw. The Stooges attempted to make a final film in 1969 called Cook's Tour, which was essentially a documentary of Howard, Larry, and Curly out of character, touring the U.S., meeting with fans. Cook's Tour. Production halted when on January 8th, Larry suffered a major stroke during filming, paralyzing the left side of his body. He died in June of 24 at 75 at age 72. Early footage of Larry was shot so that Cook's Tour was eventually released in a 52-minute version to home video. Moe married Helen Schoenberger, a cousin of Harry Houdini. The following year, Schoenberger persuaded Howard to retire since she was pregnant. Howard attempted to earn a living in succession of normal jobs, none of which was very successful, and soon returned to acting with Ted Healy. They had 2 children, Joan Howard and Paul Howard. Paul is still alive. Howard died of lung cancer at age 77 on May 4th, 1975, or the 23rd of Iyar. He was portrayed by Paul Ben-Victor in The Three Stooges, a 2000 made-for-TV biopic that focused on the trio's years in show business And in 2012, a Farrelly Brothers film, The Three Stooges, Chris Diamantopoulos plays Mo, and Skylar Gisondo plays young Mo. Thanks for the laughs. We will never forget. Today's Sphira.
49 days to count the Omer. After it's dark, Mark. At the end of our reef, Steve. Do it in shul, shmul. Just count with me. Look for the stars, Tamar. Just be sure to make the bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushonu b'mitzvoso v'tzivonu al sfiras ha'omer hayim shmeinu shloshim yom shehem chamisha shavuos u'shloisha yomim b'omer.
Where is compassion most needed? When is it most begging to be worked on? At home, or in the subjects that hit closest to home? Today is day 38, Compassion in Bonding. Compassionate bonding, or healthy attachment, is an invitation to bring more balance, integrity, and consideration into our personal relationships or the projects with which we engage. Both compassion and bonding are already blenders that take into consideration two opposite realities: the desire to give, the understanding that we have what to receive; the desire to create, the understanding that we need to cooperate; the desire to forge forward, the understanding that with humility and patience we need to create pause and space for others. So today, using compassion in bonding, bring compassion home where it matters most.
Real love is fueled by compassion. Do we have compassion? Today's divine attribute in the counting of the Omer is Tiferet Shebiyesod, the harmonious balance of foundation. This balance is the key to compassion. Like all the other attributes, our foundation has to be balanced between love and the strength of discipline and restraint. Yesod means that we are striving for a real connection, and love is not necessarily enough, because true bonding requires compassion and restraint sometimes. The attribute of Tiferet always conveys compassion. If I really love someone, then I feel their pain. Without the balanced compassion of Tiferet in a relationship, it can't aspire to be true love, but a real soul-level connection will be built upon a foundation of compassion, balanced with restraint, each expressed in proper measure. HaYom 38 yom, shehem 5 shavuot u3 yomim la'omer. Today is 38 days, which are 5 weeks and 3 days of the Omer.
All right. And that takes us to HaYom for the 23rd day of Iyar.
We all have good days and bad days. On a bad day, when there's not a low energy, not a lot of inspiration, then it's like even like the smallest task becomes a huge burden. It's like, oh, I have to do this, and on a good day, when you've got this energy, positive energy inside of you, then it's like you whiz through, everything's a breeze, everything's a pleasure. So, whether you're having a good day or a bad day makes a huge difference to everything. How then does a Jew make sure that he's in his good, positive energy zone? So today's HaYom says the following. Before we get to the HaYom, for a Jew, tefillah, the time of prayer, is so central, because that's when a Jew connects to his Maker. That's when you plug in. For a chassid in particular, tefillah is so central because tefillah is the time for what in Hasidic terminology is called avodah. Avodah tefillah with avodah literally means service, but what we're really talking about is prayer as a transformative experience. When the chassid prays properly with avodah, he's not just talking to Hashem, he's connecting in a way where he's trying to really elevate his inner self, elevate his character, and really make him or herself elevate to a higher spiritual way of thinking. And when the chassid finishes davening, he's a bit of a different person because he's connected and elevated himself in a way that makes everything completely different. So says the HaYom, the beginning of one's decline is the lack of avodah in davening. When we fail to give tefillah, to give davening the proper attention that it requires, it's all downhill from there. Because then you don't have that energy inside of you. You're not connected. You're not inspired. You're not on fire. So everything becomes dry and cold. Every mitzvah becomes like a burden. Oh my goodness, I have to do this, I have to do that. Everything is rushed. You find yourself just trying to get through the day. And one loses the sense of pleasure in Torah study. Even when you're doing things that should be enjoyable, like studying an interesting Torah thought, all of a sudden that becomes a pain in the neck as well. The atmosphere itself becomes crass, and needless to say, one is totally incapable of influencing others. If you're not inspired yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to inspire somebody else. So davening, and davening in the introspective Hasidic way that we call avodah, is critical because it's the way to give yourself that boost, to elevate yourself, and now you can just kind of, all of a sudden, everything that you're doing is no longer this burden. Now it's a pleasure. It's an opportunity. It's wonderful.
All right. Wonderful is good. How about a word from our sponsors? And now, a word from our sponsors. PestProRidol.com.
PestProRidol.com. Trusted by the best to keep away the pests. We are offering COVID-19 disinfection services. Mention this ad and get 1 month free service. Visit us at PestProRidol.com.
Tarzane Group. Micro, miniature, and small orchids. Go to tarzanegroup.com or call Tomas at 305-440-0565. That's 305-440-0565 and order today. Visit Tomas and Yair at tarzanegroup.com. Micro, miniature, and small orchids. Beautiful in your home. Go to the website and read Tomas's orchid blog. And by Dina D Design. DinaDDesign@gmail.com. Fine artwork, custom made to your specifications, logos, wall hangings, Judaica, and you can even have something for your child's room. Dina D Designs. Go to her Facebook or Instagram or call or text. Thank you very much to our sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor, please go right up here to where it says patreon.com/theactorsrabbi, and you can contribute even only $1 a month if you'd like, but that'll help us bring this broadcast to you on a daily basis and cover our expenses. Be sure to thank your sponsors when shopping and mention Breakfast with Elli when you're shopping there. There might be discounts. Thanks for watching.
Torah, 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 Siva Lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Siva Lanu Moshe.
If you would like to become a sponsor today and sponsor the learning of Torah all around the world, huge mitzvah. All right, Shabbos Chazak we just had, and with that, we completed the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, and now we go into Bamidbar. The book of Bamidbar, which is the name of our parsha, and the name of the entire book means Bamidbar, in the desert. However, The name itself doesn't seem to bring any light to any unique qualities of our Parsha at all. At this point in the story, the Jewish people had been situated in the desert for a considerable period of time, throughout the entire book of Vayikra and part of the book of Shmos. So what is now added by the fact that the Jewish people were in the desert? They've already been in the desert. Well, the answer to this question lies in the fact that we always read Parshas Bamidbar before Shavuos, before we experience the giving of the Torah once again. For spiritually, the Torah is given anew every Shavuos, and it's necessary to recall and take to heart the fact that the Torah was not given in a civilized environment, but in a desert. Now, that lesson is twofold. Number one, a desert is a place of utter desolation where no man can live, according to the prophet Jeremiah. So the Torah was given to indicate that it should be embraced without any preconceptions or ulterior motives. When a person lives in a civilized place and encounters a new idea or suggestion, he first evaluates it to determine whether it's acceptable according to societal norms. With Torah, however, that's a mistake. The correct approach to accepting the Torah is na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and later we will understand. That's why Torah was given in a desert, where nobody lives, to indicate that one needs to be truly open-minded, in other words, not influenced by one's environment, to appreciate the values of the Torah. And two, the Torah was given in a desert to teach that sharing the Torah with those who currently find themselves in a spiritual desert is fundamental to Torah Judaism. It's not the case that Torah can also reach those who are found in the spiritual wasteland. On the contrary, the central theme of the giving of the Torah is to transform every spiritual desert into a civilized environment. In the first Aliyah, Hashem commands Moshe to count all the Jewish men of military age, between 20 and 60. Hashem names one member of each tribe as the Nasi, the leader of the tribe, and each Nasi will assist Moshe and Aaron in taking census of his tribe. An additional objective of this census was to establish the tribal lineage of every Jew in the desert at that time. That's fantastic. I love that. All right. Shnayim Yomi for the day.
Welcome to Sefer Bamidbar. Here we're going to start the first Aliyah with a Dvar Torah from the one and only Mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva, Rav Yerucham Lubavitz. Rav Yerucham had such an impact on his Talmidim that they would say that when they met him, they felt like they were born for the first time. So much so that if you'd ask a student in the Mir Yeshiva in Poland in the days of Rav Yerucham how old you are, they would count from when they met Rav Yerucham. I'm 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, based on when they met Rav Yerucham. Rav Yerucham points out the following thing. The Parsha begins that it was Bamidbar Sinai Ba'oel Moed Ba'echad HaChodesh Hasheni B'shana Hashenis L'Teisa Meretz Yisrael. Hashem spoke to Moshe B'Midbar Sinai in the Oel Moed, three different specific points about the location. Be'echad l'chodesh hasheni, in the first of the second month, b'shan hashenis, of the second year, l'teisa meretz Mitzrayim lemor tzif to say. Now this is a very long introduction of where and when exactly Hashem told this to Moshe. When exactly did Hashem give Moshe this commandment, Se'u es b'nei Yisrael, to count the Jewish people? So ask Rav Yerucham, why do we need so much detail here? Rav Yerucham says the following rule, which is tremendous. The rule comes from a medrash. The medrash explains, the pasuk says, Tzidkascha kehar Hakhel, mishpatecha tehom rabbah. Your righteousness is like the great mountains, and your judgment is like the depths. The medrash explains that Hashem's righteousness, Tzidkascha she'ata mevia la'olam meforsemes kararim halalu. Hashem, when you do righteousness, it must be elaborated on. But when you do din, when you do strict judgment, that's tehom rabbah. It's like the depths that cannot be seen that are hidden. Says Rav Yerucham, we need to learn from here. What is Hashem commanding Moshe Se'u es b'nei Yisrael. Lift up the Jewish people. Lift up, count them, Se'u, lift them up. When you're lifting something up, tzidkascha k'harekel, must be elaborated in all the detail possible. Don't miss one point. Keep going and going and going. When you're lifting someone up, embellish, elaborate, say everything that you can. But chas v'shalom, sometimes mishpatecha, Hashem needs to give us judgment. And sometimes we need to even be strict or disciplinary with people around us. Then to home rabbah, conceal it. You don't need to elaborate. Say as little as possible. Don't pass judgment. Don't be critical. Don't condemn. Don't complain. When you're saying the good, elaborate. Share as much as you can. Give every single detail. The where, the when, the what, the why, the how. But when you have to say something negative, say as little as possible.
All right. All right. Let us now hear from Rabbi Weinfeld.
A guten Erev Shabbos and a guten Erev Shavuos. In less than a week, we're going to celebrate Shavuos, Be'ezras Hashem. Shavuos, the day of Matan Torah, when we received by Har Sinai, Aseres HaDibros, Torah Shebeksav, Torah Shebe'al Peh, Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod, everything about Torah. But also, the Mesorah that we received then in Har Sinai, how to teach Yiddish Kinderlach, Kriyo, Aleph Beis. Because Aleph Beis is not only a language that through learning Aleph Beis we will know how to learn Torah and how to daven and how to speak Lashon Kodesh. Aleph Beis is part of Torah. Aleph Beis is Heilike Oisios with Heilike Nekudos, and the way how to teach Yiddish Kinderlach, boys and girls, Aleph Beis is also according to Mesorah. To teach them first the Oisios, this is a Aleph, this is a Beis, all Aleph Beis, again and again, until they know very good the Aleph Beis. And only then we will teach them the Nekudos. And the Nekudos, we know that the Rabbeim are telling us, according to Kabbalah, that are names of Malochim, and not only a line, a dot, or whatever. They are names of Malochim Kedoshim. And therefore, by teaching them the Nekudos, we are really bringing into their neshama, to their brain, to their heart, Yiddishkeit, Yiras Shomayim. And after they know the Nekudos, after teaching them according to the order of the Nekudos, Komatz, Pasach, and so, and not jumping, because the order is also part of Mesorah and Yiddishkeit, and the way how to give them Yiras Shomayim, then we are teaching them to attach the Nekudos to the letters. Kometz Aleph, O, and teaching them again and again, and then all the Nekudos attaching to the letters. Because we know what the Rabbeim are telling us since the Baal Shem Tov until our Rebbe, many times, repeating themselves, that the only way how to teach is to say to the children that the way how to say a letter is with the Nekudo. There is a Kometz Aleph, O, Kometz Beis, Bo, and so, and then Pasach Aleph, A, Pasach Beis, Ba. And a letter without a Nekudo doesn't have any chayas. It's like a golem, a doimem, no chayas. There is no way we should teach our kinderlach to say the oisies without the nekudas. Because it's about a Mesorah, how to teach them, and the Mesorah is not only a way how to teach them a language, like we said before, it's a way how to give them Yiddishkeit and the beginning of Torah. And if someone is thinking that in other languages we have maybe quicker ways how to teach kinder Ingelach and Meidalach languages, like Lehavdil in English or other languages, the Rebbe is telling us in a letter that we should never think about saving time for Hashem. Hashem knew the way how to tell us to teach Yiddish Kinderlach according to the Mesorah or the Aleph Beis, and he said, and the Rabbeim are telling us we should stick to this way, and if sometime takes more time in our old way, in the Mesorah way, we should stick to this way and not to try to save time for Hashem. And if someone is having a hard time teaching this way, says the Rebbe, he should learn himself and he should go to practice again and again how to teach in the olden way, in the Messiah way. Because we don't have to save time for Hashem. And Hashem will give us back time and will give us back in Mirz Hashem Naches. And this is the only one way to learn. By the way, by teaching in the way of Messiah, the government here in New York State will understand in Mirz Hashem that there is no way to mix in our chinuch. Because if we have a Messiah not only about Shabbos, Kashrus, Tefillin, and everyday mitzvahs that we are doing, our Messiah is also how to read, how to speak, how to learn the Torah, and it's part of Haseres Adibres, then they will say, wow. So there is no way we should tell Yidden what to do in their chinuch. So let's do it Bezrat Hashem, and let's be Matzliach, and let's hear Besuras Toives, and Hashem should give us Kabbalah Satoiro, Besimcha u Bipnimius.
Amen. Really, really cool. All right. Kabbalah Satoiro Besimcha Bipnimius. We're a little bit more than a week till Shavuos. Come on, computer. There we go. Excuse me. We're a little bit more than a week till Shavuos. We're 12 days till Shavuos. So that's pretty cool. All right. Here is Rabbi Label Wolf today.
We're beginning the book of Bamidbar. And the book of Bamidbar is often called the book of Numbers. Why? Because a census of the people is taken. And it's not the first census, a good number of times. And you wonder, why does God keep counting us over and over again? Well, were you to be, and you might be, an art collector, and a wealthy art collector, who collected pieces of art and had his or her private gallery at home, would you not visit that gallery and look at your masterpieces that you have acquired often, over and over again, admiring each particular one? We are God's art gallery. Hashem always likes to admire the souls that exist in the world, his treasures. And therefore, the counting of each one of us, singularly, individually, is God admiring his treasure. Therefore, live up to it. Make sure that you comport yourself in the way that a treasure should be. Be optimal you. Go out into the world and make the world a much better place.
All right. A very interesting essay from Rabbi Yossi Goldman in South Africa. I still remember Mr. Seligman, my English teacher back in high school, acting out a scene we were studying from George Eliot's Silas Mariner. With power and passion, he dramatized how the poor man would lovingly count his gold pieces as the shiny coins slipped through his fingers. This image comes to mind as we read Parshas Bamidbar, the first book in the book of Numbers, in which Hashem instructs Moshe to count the Israelites. Just like old Silas, Hashem counts that which is most precious to him. Sometimes I wonder if we ourselves realize how treasured we are in Hashem's eyes. In any census, every individual counts once, no more, no less. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe's judge, Moshe Dayan, Moshe Chaim Goldberg, or Moshe Mendelssohn, the Rambam, Rabbi Shmulewitz, Mr. Shlemiel, great or ordinary, we are all equally counted in the eyes of Hashem. And the Jewish nation counts on us, every single one of us. A little old Jew, wearing thick glasses, pushing a walker, hobbles into the NASA recruitment office in Cape Canaveral. The receptionist asks, "How may I help you?" The man says, "It's about your advertisement where you say you're looking for astronauts for your next space mission." "Yes," says the woman, "we're looking for young people who are qualified pilots in excellent physical condition with perfect eyesight." "Well," says the old man, "I just wanted you to know, on me, you shouldn't rely." How many of us say, "Don't rely on me," or "Don't count on me"? But we all count. And yes, we count on you. I remember hearing the Rebbe use the astronaut metaphor to illustrate the keen sense of responsibility every one of us should feel about our own historic national mission. What if an astronaut on board a spacecraft would decide to do his own thing, despite the amount of time, money, and resources invested in his training? Instead of following Mission Control's meticulous plan, today he'll take a break, play it cool, and relax. Obviously, that would be a disaster in the making, with the potential to compromise the entire project. Well, explained the Rebbe, we Jews have invested centuries, indeed millennia, into the project of our Jewish continuity. We have educated and nurtured generations of young people to fulfill their roles as dedicated members of our people and to be committed to our national mission. And now, a Jew with such an awesome heritage and huge responsibility will simply walk away from the project and do his own thing? Surely that would be no less of a disaster than that of our reckless astronaut. Whether we're considering our marriage choices, what kind of home we wish to establish, or how we will educate our own children, we should all appreciate that every single one of us counts, and the Jewish people are counting on us. Clearly, people living in small towns were more committed because they knew if not for them, there might be no one else to do the job. With fewer people available, they felt a deeper sense of responsibility. Interestingly, when those same people moved to the bigger cities, they often no longer have that same degree of involvement in communal affairs. Reb Yisroel Salanter, the father of the Musar movement, once said, "Every Jew should feel as if he or she is the last Jew on earth, and if they won't do what needs to be done, then there won't be anyone else to do it." Over the years, I've made it a point to many a bar mitzvah boy, you count. And yes, you are personally responsible for the future of the Jewish people. Yeah, it's a bit of a guilt trip, but imagine if every single Jew felt that way. Rabbi Yossi Goldman was sent by the Rebbe to South Africa in 1976. I remember that, where he was the founding director of the company's first Chabad house. In 1986, with the Rebbe's guidance, he accepted the invitation to become the rabbi of the Sinderham Shul, where he is now Life Rabbi Emeritus. He's also president of the South African Rabbinical Association and often represents the South African Jewish community on radio and television. He's authored many books. You can look him up again, Rabbi Yossi, Y-O-S-S-Y, Yossi Goldman. All right. And now we are going to hear from, yes, Rabbi Barber.
I was recently at a 50th wedding anniversary, and the wife got up to speak and she thanked everyone for coming. And she said, "I want you to know that the last 50 years have passed by like 2 days." One of the guests who were there screamed out, "Like 2 days? Wow, that's incredible. What 2 days?" And she replied, "The 2 days were like Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. Yom Kippur is when we fast all day, it's a day of atonement, and Tisha B'Av is the day that we recall and remember the destruction of the Second Temple." Have you ever been to a chuppah, the Jewish wedding ceremony? I'm sure you would have appreciated the great spirituality and the holiness that takes place. But there are a number of customs that are somewhat strange. For example, in many circles, the bride will actually walk around the groom 7 times. I usually explain it because we want the bride to be that dizzy that she'll agree to marry the fellow. On a more serious note, what I usually explain is that each time she walks around the Khatan, it's as if another spiritual world is now participating in this wedding, and there are 7 spiritual worlds. So by the time she walks 7 times around, all of the spiritual worlds have come and are participating in this chuppah. However, the custom that I find most fascinating is one which is called the Badekin. It's where prior to the chuppah, the Khatan, the groom, will come to the Kala and he will take a veil and he will cover her face. Now, in very religious circles, the veil is made from material that is extremely thick, to the extent that the bride cannot really see past her nose, and she's actually needed to be led to the chuppah. So here we have Khatan and Kala standing under the chuppah, and the Khatan, when he looks to his right to see his Kala, he cannot see her face. Seems rather strange that under the chuppah he cannot even see the face of the woman he's about to marry. But I believe there's a very profound idea that is being played out here. And that is, we all know, every Jewish Kala is extremely beautiful. But as beautiful as she is, by her 50th wedding anniversary, she will definitely not look like she did at the day of her wedding. And the groom is saying to his bride, I am not marrying you for your external beauty, because that I know will fade. I'm actually marrying you for your inner essence, for your inner beauty, for your inner self. In Ethics of Our Fathers we read that love that is based on a particular cause, once that cause has been removed, then the love will be lost as well. If one loves someone because of what they give you, as soon as they stop giving, then you, in turn, will stop loving. Only love that is based on emotional closeness and true friendship will last. This idea is seen in the weekly portion. This week we begin to read the 4th book of the Torah, the book of Bamidbar. It is also referred to as the book of Numbers, because at the beginning of this week's portion, God counts the Jewish people, and Rashi points out that this is not the first time that he's counting the Jewish people. And Rashi tells us that the reason why God counted the Jewish people was to express his incredible love that he has for each and every one of us. When you count a group of people, everyone is equal. It is irrelevant how wealthy or how talented you are, you only count as one. And for those who seemingly are insignificant, they are equally counted as one. What then are we really counting? We are not counting their personality, we're not counting their character traits or their wealth, we're actually counting their very essence, that which defines them. God, by counting each and every one of us, is expressing that there is an unshakable love between God and his children. God is saying, I love you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. Someone once asked a rabbi, Rabbi, tell me, how many children do you have? And the rabbi said, I've only got one. They said, only one? Rabbi, I know that you have at least 10 children. To which he responded, I have only one Moishi and one Devoiri. How often do we hear people say, I'm in love? When you ask them to explain what does it mean to be in love, they're lost for words. I'm as lost as the next guy when it comes to defining love. But what I do know is that the way that God demonstrated his love to the Jewish people by counting us, and the way that we stand under the chuppah with the color's face covered by a veil, I understand that a key ingredient And what is at the very foundation of true love is a recognition that you love somebody, not because of what they do, but rather because of who they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rabbi. I do appreciate that. All right. You're going to have to give me a minute over here. I have to respond to somebody. There we go. Slicha, toda. Somebody asked me for Hebrew subtitles. Unfortunately, I don't have that capability. I wished I did. That would be great. That would be really, really great. All right, moving on now to the saying of Tehillim. We are going to be saying together.
שיר המעלות לדוד, שמחתי באומרים לי, בית אדוני נלך, עומדות היו רגלינו בשערייך ירושלים, ירושלים הבנויה, כעיר שחוברה לה יחדיו, ששם עלו שבטים, שבטיה, עדות לישראל, להודות לשם אדוני, כי שמה ישבו כיסוס למשפט, כיסוס לבית דוד. שאלו שלום ירושלים, ישליו אוהבייך, יהי שלום בחילך, שלווה בארמנותייך, למען אחי ורעי הדברה נא שלום בך. למען בית אדוני אלוהינו אבקשה טוב לך.
All right, Tanya, for today, the 23rd day of Iyar.
Tanya thoughts for the 23rd of Iyar. Since Hashem is here, Hashem is there. In fact, Hashem is truly everywhere. What's the big deal about the presence of the Shekhinah? The difference isn't in Hashem, it's in our capacity to recognize him. Every day is Mother's Day. One day of the year, we focus on our mother. Hashem fills time and space. Sometimes, and in some places, we see him more than in other places. It's not Hashem who changes. We're the ones with the joystick that can manipulate our capacity to perceive Hashem. In those circumstances, we say the Shekhinah is present. Regardless, God is always there.
Let's talk Tanya for the 23rd of Iyar. We are officially in the home stretch of Tanya. We are today starting chapter 51. There's 3 chapters left in Tanya. We finished our discussion, which took us around 10 chapters, all about Kavana, the importance of having emotional investment in our Torah study, in our doing mitzvahs. And the last 3 chapters of Likutei Amarim, which is the first part of Tanya, it feels like an appendix in a way. We are going to be going back and revisiting that which we talked about in chapters 35 through 37 of Tanya, where it spoke about Dira B'Tachtonim, how us, through doing mitzvahs, we create a home for God here in this world. And we are going to dig deeper and have a deeper understanding of how it is that our mitzvahs create this home for God over here in our world. In the beginning of chapter 35, in introducing the concept of Dira B'Tachtonim, the Alter Rebbe cites a metaphor from the Zohar. The Zohar says over there that every single one of us, we are like a candle. We are a divine candle. The wick is the body. The flame is the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And what keeps the wick, the body, connected to the flame, to the Shekhinah? That is the oil. And what is the oil? The oil is the mitzvahs that we do, the action mitzvahs that we do. Although we explained this metaphor back then, there are still quite a few secrets that are hidden within this metaphor that we've not yet unlocked, and that is what we will be doing, God willing, over the next 3 chapters. And let's start with 2 questions. Question number 1 is, we're saying that mitzvahs is what keeps us connected to the divine presence, to the Shekhinah. And the mitzvahs are compared to oil. what is the connection between mitzvahs and oil? Especially since in Kabbalah, generally, when we're talking about oil, oil is a reference to or a metaphor for wisdom, for chachma. So there's nothing more distant than wisdom on the one hand and action on the other hand. Wisdom is the highest faculty of the soul. Action is the lowest faculty of the soul. So why are we calling mitzvahs, action mitzvahs, why are we comparing it to oil? And then there's another question, which is a larger question. We're talking here about what's called hashras hashchina. This is something which we have many times in the words of our sages, shchina shruya, which means the resting of the shchina, the resting of the divine presence. In order to have the hashras hashchina, for the shchina to rest upon me, I need to do mitzvahs. What does that mean anyways? What does it mean that the shchina rests in a certain place? What does it mean that certain places are holier than other places? We know, for example, the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, we say the Shekhinah is present over there, the Shekhinah rests over there. But isn't God everywhere? If God is everywhere, what makes one place, whether it's the Holy Temple or whether it's a shul, what makes it holier, or what does it mean that God is more present in that place than in another place? To answer these questions, we're going to have to look into ourselves. The reason for that is, we human beings, we are created, B'Tselem Elokim, we are created in God's image, and what that allows is that we can look at ourselves and have deeper understanding of God. In our case, what we're going to be examining for the next few segments of Tanya is the relationship between our body and our soul. Understanding that relationship will help us understand what does it mean, Hashras Hashchina, what does it mean that the Shechina is present more in some places than other places. And we start with the question, where in the body is the soul? Is it everywhere? Is it in some places more than others? This is a conversation Dr. Rebbe begins in today's Tanya, but we will leave this conversation for tomorrow's Let's Talk Tanya.
Thank you for joining Tanya in 5. Today's lesson for the 23rd of Iyar. We begin chapter 51. Chapter 51 in one word is Hashra, the indwelling, referring to the divine presence of God. We have completed chapter 50, chapters 41 to 50, speaking about the various form of love and awe of God. We return now to what we spoke about earlier in chapter 35 as we come to a conclusion of Tanya at the end of chapter 53, and we want to understand that which the Zohar brought down from the Yenuka, the concept of the presence of God, the Shekhinah, that is overhead of an individual, the light of God, and what that light of God needs in our lives that we should have it is fuel. And what is that fuel? Oil. Oil, usually in Hasidic terminology, refers to chachma, to wisdom. Just as oil rises above water, likewise chachma is the highest of the 10 attributes and is above and beyond all of them, rises above. But in the metaphor, it refers to actually good deeds, to doing mitzvahs. So what is the relationship between chokhmah, wisdom, and good deeds? We need to understand. And to have an appreciation of that, we need to understand the concept of the indwelling of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence of God that rests in the Holy of Holies, and likewise in other places that the Shekhinah divine presence rests. What does this mean exactly? Isn't God's glory filled throughout the world? Is there no place that is void? There is no
Hashem gave us a present, do you know what it was? He gave us the Torah and we must keep its laws. He asked the other nations, do you want this gift of mine?
Spiritual entity. It's intrinsically divested from any corporeal shape, from any kind of category, from any dimension, size, or physical limitation. It is therefore it would be wrong to say that in the core and the essence of the soul, the core and the essence of the soul ultimately then is equally in the head as it is in the foot, in the essence of it. And the way the powers of the soul, the functional capabilities of the body, the functional categories of the organs of the soul, or 613 powers and vitalities of 248 organs and 368 veins and sinews of the body. They are found within the soul in a manner of potential. They are there in potentia, and they become, from the potentia in the soul, they become vested in the particular organ of the body, and since that particular organ has its uniqueness to it, but the uniqueness is not that the eye has some quality of it that makes it see. It's not the retina that sees. It's the vitality of the soul, the unique power of the soul that has its potential in its essence, is now in its core, in the brain, and from there it's vested within the physical limb to give it its unique functional power. That is all a metaphor, which we will continue with that metaphor and eventually come to the analog to understand God's presence in the world and what it means to Shekhinah and so on. And that is Tanya in 5. Thank you for joining.
All right. Sorry about that. It was an accident. Okay, and that brings us to Pirkei Avot. We are in chapter 6, the last chapter of Pirkei Avot. And we are going to...
Okay, we're on Avot Perek Vav Mishnah Aleph. First Mishnah in the 6th chapter of Masechet Avot. So the first thing you have to know about the 6th chapter of Masechet Avot is what the introduction up to Masechet Avot, and there are a bunch of different girsa'ot to it. But read it as such. Shanu Chachamim b'lashon Mishnah. The sages learned or taught in the language of the Mishnah. Baruch shebachar behem u'b'mishnah tam. Blessed is he that shows them and their Mishnah. I.e., this perek. Let's look at the Parish of Rashi. Notice immediately here, there's no Bar Tanura and no Rambam. Right? In the last one we had Bar Tanura, we had Rambam. This last chapter of Pirkei Avot is not part of the classic Pirkei Avot. But instead, it's part of, it was added on later on. Why? Because there was a minhag, a very famous custom, of learning Pirkei Avot in the weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. We have 6 Shabbatot, but there are only 5 chapters. So this chapter, it's a chapter of Braitot. It has a different kind of aura, a different kind of feel to it. Okay, but it was added on later on. But it's a very, very ancient minhag, meaning we find it even in the Siddur of Amram Gaon, from the time in Bavel, in the community of Bavel, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, millennia ago. Okay, so therefore, it's just important to know that this chapter is not part of the Mishnah. Braitahi, ubulashona Mishnah Ishniya. Rashi says the Braita in the language of the Mishnah. But ain't no Mishnah. Okay, but it's not the Mishnah. Okay, because until now all the chapters were Mishnah. This is not part of the Mishnah. It's part of the Braita. Why? As I said, these are words of Agadah. And the Mishnah we're going to talk about mostly engage in the idea of studying Torah. They read them in the shul, as I said. They added them on because they needed a 6th chapter. So what we're going to read through them. Rabbi Meir says, anyone who immerses himself in Torah lishma for its sake, the idea of studying Torah for its own sake, not for my benefit, not even just to know it, but to understand the Torah. So he merits many things. The whole world, the word is kedayulo, is worth it just for him. Yikra Reya is called a Reya, a friend. Yikra Ahuv, Ohevet Amakom, he's called beloved. Ohevet Amakom, Ohevet Abriyot, he loves Amakom, God. Ohevet Abriyot, he loves humanity, all people. Misamech et Amakom, he brings joy to God. Misamech et Abriyot, he brings joy to humanity. The Torah and the Torah he studies, Malbashto Anava V'yira, it adorns him, it dresses him with humility and fear of God. Umachsharto, it prepares him, liot tzaddik, to be a tzaddik, v'chasid, and righteous. Tzaddik is righteous, chasid is someone who's devoted, v'yashar, and someone who's straight, v'ne'eman, and reliable. It's interesting, it doesn't say that he becomes one, it says rather his Torah studies machshir him. The Torah study prepares him for that. Doesn't force it. And it distances him from sin. And it brings him close to merit. And they benefit from him. He's a person who has the ability to give advice. Vetushia, let me see if I get this. Tushia is the Torah shalom v'mimenu. Let's see if Rashi talks about what Tushia is for a second. Eitzah, Tushia, lo tayar balaz, inyan ga'ava ugdula. It's pride and greatness. Okay? Other people benefit from him. Okay? People learn from him. They benefit from his eitzah tushiyah, bina, his wisdom, bura, his strength. Li eitzah b'tushiyah, I have eitzah b'tushiyah, ani bina, bi gvura. I am bina, to me is gvura. The Torah that he does, notenet lo malchut, umemshala, v'chikor din. And the Torah that he studies gives him malchut, crown of monarchy. Memshala here means leadership, the ability to lead. The chikur din, and the idea of the ability to root out the justice. Umegalim lo razei Torah, and they reveal to him the secrets of the Torah. He's like an overflowing ma'ayan, well, and like an unending river. And he is tsanua, he is modest, okay? And erech ruach. Erech ruach, the Kati system means it's savlan. It's like patient. It's not just patience. It's a person who's willing to accept savlan is suffering. And he forgives his people who embarrass him. And it makes him large, great. And exalts him on all of creation. So this is the value of someone who's supposed to take the Torah B'Shvat. He's in Torah, for its own sake. Stop here. Dedicate our learning to memory of my father, Harav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman.
All right. Fantastic. And now,
Hashem gave us a present. Do you know what it was? He gave us the Torah and we must keep its laws. He asked the other nations, do you want this gift of mine? But they said no thank you, for Torah we've no time. Then to Bnei Yisrael Hashem did go. We said Naaseh v'nishma because we love him so.
right, simple and easy. Naaseh v'nishma. We just do it because we do it. Because Hashem asked us to do it. I'm going to be teaching you now 11 Shavuos myths and misconceptions. Number 1, Shavuos is always on the 6th of Sivan. Well, every year the holiday of Shavuos takes place on the 6th and 7th days of the Hebrew month of Sivan, corresponding to around May or June. It would seem that Shavuos is always celebrated on that date. The fact is that Shavuos is not on the 6th of Sivan, but the 50th day of the Omer. We count 7 weeks. We are instructed by Torah to count 49 days of the Omer offering and to celebrate Shavuos on the 50th day. The Omer offering was brought on the 2nd day of Pesach, and according to the calendar we follow today, 50 days later is the 6th of Sivan. In times of the temple, though, each month was established new by the rabbinical court, based on the testimony of witnesses who observed the new moon. The length of each month is varied accordingly, and Shavuos therefore occurred on either the 5th, 6th, or 7th day of Sivan. Interestingly, alternate dates of Shavuos are possible even today as well. Someone who crossed the international date line between Pesach and Shavuos. In such a case, your 50th day is different than the 50th day of those around you. If you crossed the line westward from America to Australia, your Shavuos would begin on the 7th of Sivan. Conversely, if you crossed eastward from Australia to America, you would begin celebrating Shavuos on the 5th of Sivan. Now, if you are planning to cross the international date line sometime between Pesach and Shavuos, Make sure to discuss the relevant halachic details with your local Orthodox rabbi. All right, we will do fact number 2 tomorrow, God willing. Sefer HaMitzvah.
No, it's not impossible that Rebbe did say, just study Rambam each and every day. I'll never miss my daily Rambam. My Rebbe so desires, I'm not busy or too tired. When I learn Rambam connected, I remain, I am a link in the Rebbe's golden chain.
All right, Mitzvah Minute. I didn't put in the right one over here. Hold on one second. I will fix that right now. Here we go. All right, day 22.
Baruch Hashem, it is day number 22 of our daily study of the Rambam Sefer Mitzvahs. We mentioned yesterday that we're going to be studying this same mitzvah over and over again for several days. And that is because the way we study Rambam Sefer Mitzvahs is we study the mitzvahs that correspond to the subject matter that we are studying in the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah. Now, in the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, yesterday we finished the laws of Shema and we started the laws of Tefillah, of prayer. We did chapter 1. Today, in the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, we're doing chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the laws of prayer. And there are 15 chapters total, so we have several more days of this. I'm going to try, with Hashem's help, to bring out different interesting aspects of the mitzvah because we're going to be learning it every day. All right, so here we go. Positive commandment number, do you remember from yesterday when it was? Number 5, yes. Positive commandment number 5 is the mitzvah to serve Hashem through prayer. That's how the Rambam frames it. It's the mitzvah to serve Hashem, specifically how? Through prayer. Very interesting. How often should you pray? I mean, we know Jews pray 3 times a day. Okay, so in chapter 1 that we studied yesterday in the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, the Rambam says, praying 3 times a day, the prayer times, that's rabbinic. The biblical obligation is once a day. Once a day, you should pray. Also, the words, the specific wording is rabbinic. But to pray in some words, at least once a day, that is biblical. Okay. Very interesting. The Ramban, Nachmanides, Rav Moshe ben Nachman, who came after the Rambam, he wrote a commentary on the Sefer Mitzvahs known as the Hasagas Ramban, and he disagrees vehemently. He says there is no such biblical obligation to pray every day. No such thing. And he makes a very strong argument based on pointing out the way that halachically we treat prayer differently, more leniently, than similar obligations such as Birkas Hamazon and Shema. Birkas Hamazon is the grace after meals, and Shema is the recitation of the Shema Yisrael that we spoke about yesterday. So those are similar mitzvahs because they have to do with speaking words of praise of Hashem, and those are in a different category than prayer. And the Ramban says, you know why? Because the grace after meals and saying the Shema are biblical obligations. They are mitzvahs. Each one of them are one of the 613. Prayer is not one of the 613. It's not. It's a completely rabbinic concept, prayer. That's what the Ramban says. Okay, so according to the Ramban, would there ever be a biblical obligation to pray? Or is it only rabbinic all the time? Well, I'll tell you. The Ramban actually learns that prayer comes from another source. The Rambam says it's the mitzvah of serving Hashem through prayer. The Ramban says it's the mitzvah to rely on, to call out to cry out in times of crisis, in times of an acute need. That when your back is against the wall, who do you turn to? Who do you cry out to? To Hashem. And that is the biblical obligation. But according to the Ramban, that only happens when you're in such a situation. So it doesn't necessarily happen every day. Maybe it never happens. So according to the Rambam, there's a mitzvah to pray every day. According to the Ramban, the mitzvah to pray is only in response to an acute need that should arise, but only if it does arise. And that is a fundamental distinction in the ways that the Rambam and the Ramban view this cornerstone of Jewish life, of prayer. We're going to continue talking about the mitzvah of prayer for the next few days. So let's keep it up. We'll see you tomorrow with Hashem's help.
Today, like yesterday, we continue to discuss the obligation of vidui, of confession. Yesterday we learned that the source for vidui in the Torah is in chapter 5 of the book of Bamidbar. The Rambam, however, points out that there is actually an earlier source for this in the Torah. In Parshas Vayikra, when discussing the sacrifice to be brought for the sin of eating sacrificial meat and entering the temple in a state of ritual impurity, which we'll get to on day 154, day 190 as well, stay tuned. The pasuk over there says as well, V'hisvada asher chata aleha. The person should confess for the sin which he has done. The reason that we don't look to that pasuk, to that verse, as the source for the obligation of vidui is because the verse over there uses the word aleha, on it, which sounds like specifically for that sin one needs to confess, but we wouldn't be able to learn from there the need to confess for any other sin. Therefore, we turn to the verse in Bamidbar where it's clearly stated that for any sin, one does a confession.
Matters of Mashiach is up next. All right. For the 23rd of Iyar, the Leviathan will slaughter the Shor Habor with its fin. Now, how can this be valid when it's forbidden to slaughter with a serrated knife, and a fish's fin is serrated? Well, Mashiach will reveal new dimensions of the Torah, which will explain why that is valid. Mashiach isn't going to change any laws of the Torah, and he's not permitted to do so. Rather, he's going to demonstrate how such a slaughtering is valid under current Torah law. Slaughtering an animal represents removing our drive for our animalistic behavior. Normally, this has to be done through a single and total commitment. However, the elevation accomplished by the Leviathan's fin represents understanding the significance of action on every level. There are many rungs in the spiritual ladder, and each must be understood and accomplished individually. It's impossible to accomplish it all in a single leap. And for that reason, taking it step by step is not considered interrupting the process. We must realize that Torah is nitzchias, eternal. However, as we grow and change, the same Torah applies to us differently. This isn't a change of the Torah, but a change in us. And even when Mashiach comes, the Torah will reveal and remain constant, no matter how many changes in its applications come due to our elevated state. And now, a word from our sponsors. Our PSAs. Excuse me. It's 7 days worth of groceries and hot meals every single day. In Rockland County, Tomche, Shabbos.org, in Lakewood, Tomche.org. Chicago is breakfastwithelli.live/Chicago Food Bank, and our master list at breakfastwithelli.live/Soup Kitchens. Achiezer.org is there for you, whatever you happen to need. from soup to nuts, really. They've got it all. All right? Contact them if you need their help. And Hatzalah EMS 24/7, 365 worldwide. Yeah, that's right. Get the Hatzalah Global Assist app for more information. Mizaskim in times of bereavement is there to help you out, and Just One Shabbos is there to help bring our beloved roots back to the mitzvah Shabbat to the fullest. Mother, you see a hate crime in progress, please call 911. And when you're out there and about, please wear a mask. And not only wear
a mask. Is this
social
really
distance,
much to ask?
you can get your vaccinations and your booster shots so that we may bring some heaven. After many years, some began to follow out to Jews who were not living a traditional life. They called it bringing close. The term didn't find favor in the Rebbe's eyes. He wrote, "You say you are being mekarev, bringing close those who are distant. What gives you the right to call them distant and pretend that you're close? You must approach each and one as though you were an emissary sent by the King of Kings of the King of Kings, to talk with the Prince, his only son." Never disrespect a fellow, ever. So important. Come talk to me about it. Social. Any of the actors, rabbis, at Clubhouse, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Telegram, Twitter, WhatsApp, or at theactorsrabbi.com, where you can avail yourself of life coaching services should you need them on a sliding scale. After Bracha.
Baruch ato Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam boirei nefashos rabois v'chesronan al kol ma sheborasa lachayos bohem nefesh kol chai baruch chai ha'olamim.
All right. At Patreon sponsors past program, good old Tarzan, find Dr. Susan Spitzer. Bracha be like to become a sponsor today. Please go to patreon.com, the Actors Rabbi, or breakfastwithelli.live/tip-jar. All right, Mo Howard's yahrzeit today. All right. There you go. Mo Howard's yahrzeit today. It's a big day. Give some extra tzedakah, do an extra mitzvah in his honor. He gave us many, many years of laughter. And so I think we can do a mitzvah for him today as well. All right. Please daven for Raphael Chaim Meir Ben Sima Chassia, excuse me, to whom we dedicate this day of learning. Should have a refuah shalema. All right. David HaMelech, the King David of the Tehillim, of the Psalms. We have a beautiful song about him today. So go out and do something nice, something good for someone today. 12 days until Shavuos, all right? 12 days till Shavuos. I'm very excited about that. David HaMelech, Uri Damari, has a beautiful song for us. In the words of Rabbi Isaac Halmer, have affection for fellow. Hashem will have affection for you. Do a kindness for fellow. Hashem will do a kindness for you. Draw fellow close. Hashem will draw you close to him. Make it a great and glorious day. Be the reason someone smiles. See you tomorrow. Please come back.
דוד המלך, עליו השלום, דוד המלך, משיחנו. דוד המלך, עליו השלום, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל, הביאת משיחנו.
דוד המלך ושלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל על ביאת משיחנו,
על החולים שהתרפאו, על הבריאים שלא יכלו, ועל פרנסתם שהתברכו, ולבטל מהם כל גזרות קשות, כל גזרות קשות.
על החולים שהתרפאו, על הבריאים שלא יכלו, ועל פרנסתם שהתברכו, ולבטל מהם כל גזרות קשות, כל גזרות קשות.
ויהי דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו. ויהי דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו. ניי 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 ניי.
דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו. דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו, על החולים שהתרפאו, על הבריאים שלא יכלו, ועל פרנסתם שהתברכו, ולבטל מהם כל גזרות קשות, כל גזרות קשות. על החולים שהתרפאו, על הבריאים שלא יכלו, ועל פרנסתם שהתברכו, ולבטל מהם כל גזרות קשות, כל גזרות קשות.
ויהי דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו. ויהי דוד המלך עליו השלום, היה מתפלל, היה מתפלל על כל העניינים שצריכים ישראל עד ביאת משיחנו.